The envelope was heavier than it looked. Ivory vellum with gold edging, sealed in wax stamped with an unfamiliar crest. Claire turned it over twice, as if doing so might reveal some mistake. But there was no mistake. Her name was written in Romance. Handwriting, flawless, arrogant cursive that still made her stomach twist. Claire veiled, "No, miss. No, Ms. Not even Claire Devereux, her stage name now. Just Claire Vale. Like she had never left him. She sat at her kitchen counter, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug of peppermint tea, the other hovering above the wax seal. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender oil and the cinnamon toast she hadn't eaten. Her bump pressed against the edge of the table, 6 months along, and already, she could feel her daughter shifting when emotions rose too high. She broke the seal. The contents slid out with a whispered an invitation to a wedding at Roman's wedding. Roman Vale, billionaire tech CEO, media darling, and the man who had called her too fragile for motherhood just a year ago, was getting married. The event was to be held at the historic Langley estate. Black tie, no press, but select performances welcome. At the bottom, in a smaller font, handwritten this time, "Claire, you'll sing for us. One last time. R." If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Her vision blurred. She stood, clutching the paper, and walked to the window. Outside, the city glowed with careless December lights. Couples walked past below, bundled in scarves and laughter. Claire pressed the letter to her chest. Her heart kicked once, then again, from the inside. "You feel that?" she whispered, looking down at her belly. "That's your father." She hadn't seen Roman since the night he called her pregnancy a complication. That night, he'd ended their marriage with a signature and a check. She'd walked out with nothing but her songbooks and pride. No alimony, no paternity acknowledgement, just silence. Until now, her phone buzzed out a message from her agent. "This wedding gig, was this a joke? It's from Roman's PR team. Should I respond?" Claire didn't type back. Instead, she slowly placed the invitation on her piano. The keys were covered in dust. She hadn't played since the day the doctor confirmed the baby. Roman had said he wanted a clean break. That fame didn't mix with family. That her voice was better spent on the stage than in a nursery. But now he wanted her voice again. Claire looked at the piano, then at the invitation. She sat down, pressed a single note, then whispered through her tears, "If I'm going, I'm not going quietly." The first time Claire met Roman, he'd bought out the jazz club just to sit alone in the front row. He'd watched her the entire set, never clapping, never smiling, just listening. Afterward, he walked backstage and said, "Your voice doesn't belong in a room this small." At first, it was intoxicating. The gifts, the way he spoke about building a future. Roman Vale was the kind of man who didn't ask. He acquired. And for a while, Claire didn't mind being wanted that way. But there were signs, little edits too. Her wardrobe, comments about the lyrics she chose. "Sing what they want to hear," he'd say, "not what makes you cry." Then came the contracts. One to manage her career, one to protect his name, and eventually, one to bind their lives together to marriage. At the wedding, Roman gave a toast that made every guest swoon. Claire remembered the part that didn't make it into the video. "I'll give you everything. Just don't make me choose between you and the empire." They fought often and made up faster, until the day Claire showed him the pregnancy test. His jaw didn't move. His voice didn't rise. He simply stared for a long time before whispering, "Terminated." Claire laughed. She thought it was a bad joke. Roman didn't smile that he paced the kitchen, murmuring about investors, IPOs, brand liabilities. When Claire told him she wouldn't go through with it, he stood still for 10 seconds, then left. The next morning, she found the divorce papers on the marble countertop, already signed by him. No note. Just a post-it. "You chose." What followed was a blur of courtrooms and legal language meant to suffocate. Roman never appeared in person. His lawyers did. The lead, Grant Mercer, was a predator in a tailored suit. He offered Claire a settlement. Enough money to disappear, under one condition: silence that a full confidentiality agreement, no mention of Roman's name in connection to the child. No public statements. No claim to the empire. Claire had sat across from him, belly barely visible, hands trembling. "I don't want your money," she said. Grant had smirked. "Everyone does. You'll come around." She didn't. Instead, She signed the clause with a cracked heart and left the courtroom with nothing but her dignity and a scan of her baby tucked into her purse. Back in the present, Claire sat at her piano, that same scan now pinned to the wall. Behind her, she played a low chord. Her voice had once filled Roman's penthouse and his boardroom, charmed his clients and his conscience. But now it would be her weapon, because while the contract had silenced her voice publicly, it hadn't stopped her from singing. And at his wedding, under chandeliers and camera flashes, Roman would learn a song could tell the truth louder than any. Press release. The moment Claire stepped out of the town car, she knew nothing had changed. The wedding venue was a glass cathedral built atop a private cliffside, surrounded by manicured hedges and security guards in black suits. The kind of place where everything shimmered, except sincerity. She clutched her small duffel as the concierge approached, eyes scanning her belly before shifting back to the clipboard. Musician entrance is around the side, he said curtly. Claire nodded. No name, no recognition, just like Roman wanted. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and money. Staff buzzed with controlled urgency, adjusting floral arrangements, fluffing drapes, rehearsing cues. A harpist warmed up softly in a side chamber. Claire moved through it all like a ghost in silk. The dress she wore was ivory, backless, with a long side slit. Roman had once picked it out for her, back when he thought she'd wear it for him. It still fit, though the curve of her pregnancy now filled the silhouette differently. Fitting. This wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. In the mirror backstage, Claire adjusted her earrings, then ran a hand gently across her abdomen. We're not here for him, she whispered. We're here for us. There was a knock. A young assistant peeked in. They're ready for sound check. Claire followed her through a corridor and onto the stage platform. The ballroom was palatial, crystal chandeliers hanging like tears, white roses cascading down golden archways. Guests weren't seated yet, but she could feel their ghosts already. Roman's empire was everywhere. In the way every napkin was embossed with a gold V. In the way staff bowed too deeply. In the way power lingered, even when he wasn't in the room. As Claire adjusted the microphone stand, a familiar voice echoed across the marble. Is that her? Belle stood at the far end of the ballroom, a vision in white, all diamonds and practiced poise. Her voice was airy, untouched by hardship. The singer? Roman stood beside her, perfectly tailored, calm, unreadable. He didn't correct Belle. Didn't even blink. Claire locked eyes with him for half a second. He turned away. A flick of the wrist. A dismissal, like she was no more than a prop in his performance. Claire sang that night beneath spotlights that turned her sweat into shimmer. Every note was flawless. Every lyric chosen with intention. Strange fruit slipped into Cry Me a River, and the silence between verses felt heavier than applause. Some guests wept. Others whispered. Roman kept smiling, stone-faced, but Claire saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the way his drink stayed untouched, the coldness behind the smile he gave his bride. And Belle, still unaware, still clapping, leaned to Roman after the final note and said, "She sings like she's lived something." Claire bowed once and exited the stage, heart pounding. The performance was over, but the show had just begun. Claire stood in the shadowed wings, invisible behind the curtain, her breath still shallow from the last note. The applause faded, swallowed by the clink of champagne flutes and the soft shuffle of designer shoes. Yet her heart thudded like a drumbeat that wouldn't end. Beyond the velvet curtain, she saw Roman wrap an arm around Belle's waist. His touch was light, rehearsed, like choreography from one of his corporate promos. But Claire's eyes, seasoned from years of knowing, caught the flicker beneath the performance. Every time her voice echoed through the room, Roman's shoulders tensed. Every time she hit a lyric he once begged her to sing at night, barefoot, in their old kitchen, wine glass in hand, his jaw clenched. Guilt wasn't loud. It whispered, and tonight, Roman was full of whispers. A rustle behind her broke the tension. Claire turned to find a young man, no older than 23, holding a folded square of ivory paper. His hands trembled as he offered it to her. "I'm not supposed to," he started, then dropped his voice. "But you should know." She took the note. It was handwritten, slanted ink. No signature. He still listens to your old recordings. Every night. Vinyl. Volume low. When she's asleep. Claire blinked. She ran a thumb over the edge of the paper, letting silence swell between her and the boy. "What's your name?" she asked. "Tyler," he replied, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "I started as an intern. He promoted me fast." Too fast. She studied him. Too fast meant trusted. Or silenced. Or both. "You knew I'd be here," Claire said quietly. "Did you send the invitation?" Tyler hesitated. "I might have dropped your name during the playlist meeting," he admitted. "I knew he'd see it. Knew he'd pick a song that needed you. He never stopped playing your voice. I thought, maybe you deserve to be heard in the room, not just on a speaker in the dark." Claire folded the notes slowly. Behind them, the ballroom lights dimmed further for the cake cutting. Roman's laugh echoed, a deep, performative baritone. But it cracked at the end. Barely. A fracture no one else heard. Except her. "Be careful, Tyler," Claire warned, stepping back into the shadow. "People like him only keep secrets that serve them." He nodded, lips tight. "I know. I just wanted you to know you were never erased." "Not really." She tucked the note into her dress and exhaled. Roman hadn't erased her, that he'd preserved her. In private, her voice, like a ghost, haunting the glass walls of his empire. But ghosts had a habit of showing up when least expected. As she moved toward the dressing room, her mind raced, not with revenge, but clarity. He hadn't moved on. He'd just buried the truth beneath champagne toasts and silk veils. And now, that truth was on stage, 6 months pregnant, singing the very songs he once said saved him. The curtain might have closed, but the real story had just begun. The wedding rehearsal was supposed to be flawless, choreographed to perfection like one of Roman Vale's quarterly product launches. Spotlights panned across polished marble. Strings played. Staff and earpieces whispered timing cues. Claire stood alone at center stage, mic in hand, her voice soaring like it always had. But tonight, she made one quiet change. She sang the old song. But this time, she didn't cut the last verse. "You said the echo of my name was a lullaby, but you buried it beneath contracts and shamed that I was the chorus. You, just the silence." The words drifted like smoke across the chandeliers. There was no instrumental swell behind it, just Claire's voice and a collective intake of breath from the few staff members who realized what they'd just heard. She let the silence settle. Then she walked off stage like nothing had happened. Roman was waiting in the wings, red-faced, fists clenched. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, stepping into her path. Claire kept walking. He followed. "I said cut that verse years ago. You agreed. That wasn't part of the set list." She turned slowly, her tone icy but controlled. "You don't own this voice anymore, Roman." His jaw tensed. "Claire, no," she held. His gaze, steady. "Not the songs. Not the child. Not me." He reached for her arm. Too fast, too rough. And that's when a quiet click echoed from the hallway. Neither of them noticed the woman behind the floral arrangement. Her dress simple. Her phone recording just beneath her clutch. Claire saw her. Just briefly. Long brown hair, no press badge. Just observant eyes and the practiced stillness of someone used to hiding in plain sight. Roman didn't. He was too busy trying to control the moment. "You want to sabotage me?" he snapped under his breath. "Ruin the happiest day of my life." Claire's face didn't flinch. "Then maybe you shouldn't have invited the ghost you buried alive." He loosened his grip and stepped back, breathing hard, fighting for composure. "I gave you this stage," he muttered. "No," she said. "You gave me a microphone. What'd I do with it? That's mine." Behind them, footsteps retreated, quiet, calculated. The woman slipped away into the corridor, phone still recording. Claire walked past Roman, shoulders squared. That it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about the note he didn't own, the truth wrapped in melody. She hadn't screamed, hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. She had delivered the wound with precision, and it bled in silence. Back in the dressing room, she sat down slowly, one hand over her belly. The baby kicked. She smiled faintly that he was listening, too. Not just Roman. Everyone. Somewhere beyond the marble walls and curated lighting, a truth had been set in motion, captured on video, now whispering its way into the wrong inbox. Roman thought. He was still directing the show, but the story had already left the stage. Brielle Vale, soon to be, anyway, sat in the velvet-lined dressing room surrounded by gowns and curling irons and whispers. Her bridal makeup was halfway done, the scent of peonies and pressed powder thick in the air. But her mind wasn't in the mirror. It was elsewhere, spiraling. Claire, the singer, the one Roman had insisted on. The one who never looked directly at Brielle. The one whose voice ached even when the melody was sweet. Earlier that morning, Roman had brushed a kiss across Brielle's cheek and murmured, "Let's just get through today." His words were tight, not nervous, just off. And then there was that rehearsal, the tension backstage, the verse no one expected, the one that made Roman's hand tremble when he poured champagne afterward. Now, as a makeup artist leaned in with shimmer dust, Brielle found herself staring at her own reflection, but seeing someone else's shadow behind it. She was his muse, right? The stylist's voice was innocent. Just chatter. But it landed like a blade. Brielle blinked. "What did you say?" "Oh," the stylist froze. "Nothing. Just, I thought Claire used to be involved with him. Like, creatively." Brielle's pulse thudded. "Creatively?" she repeated, carefully. The stylist backtracked. "I don't really know. I think they worked together before. I mean, that's what someone said." Someone. The vague someone that always preceded a secret. Brielle dismissed the stylist with a polite smile, her heart starting to climb into her throat. She stood and walked to the tall window, looking out over the manicured lawn. Guests were gathering. Strings played softly in the background. Roman stood near the fountain, phone in hand, back turned. Claire wasn't in view, but Brielle's thoughts wouldn't stop racing. Why did Claire look at Roman like that during rehearsal? Why? Did Roman seem like he was waiting for something, someone, to fall? She opened her phone, typed "Claire Jazz Singer" into the search bar, and there it was, not in the headlines. Roman's lawyers had likely buried that, but tucked deep in the blog of a jazz review page. A rising talent whose collaborations with investor-turned-producer Roman Vale shaped the sound of an entire summer. The two were inseparable, on stage and off. Their final song ended in silence and legal contracts. Brielle scrolled faster at a grainy photo from 5 years ago. Claire, younger, leaning into Roman. Same eyes, same sadness. She closed the tab. The pieces fell hard that he brought her here, that he forced her here, and she was pregnant. Roman had said Claire wasn't important anymore, that it was just good optics to feature a local artist, that she had agreed to terms. Terms, like she was a clause in a deal. Brielle stared at herself in the mirror, wedding gown half-buttoned, crown still waiting to be placed. The look on her face wasn't the one she practiced. It was betrayal. It was fury. It was a woman who knew she had been sold a story, not a future. She didn't scream, didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone and sent a message to an unknown number from a leaked guest list. "Claire, meet me before the vows. Alone." The reception ballroom shimmered with gold leaf, soft candlelight, and a grand piano at its center. Guests clinked champagne flutes, the hum of pleasantries echoing under vaulted ceilings. Everything felt expensive, yet brittle. Claire adjusted the microphone, her fingers brushing against her baby bump just beneath the draped emerald gown. The lights dimmed. The band gave her the cue. She began with a familiar melody, one of the classics. Something safe. Her voice floated gently, silk over porcelain. Guests leaned in. Conversations paused. Even Roman, seated beside his new bride, turned slowly toward the stage. Then she shifted, announcement. No change in tempo, just a pivot in words. "You asked for silence, but my soul was loud. You bought the quiet, while I carried the sound." The room fell still. Roman's knuckles turned white around his glass. "You took back the vows, left me with the weight." But his heartbeat, Roman, never agreed to wait. A stifled gasp came from one of the bridesmaids. Brielle sat motionless, her eyes fixed on Claire like she was hearing language for the first time. Roman stood up, slowly, like rising from a funeral pew. His lips parted, but no words came out. Claire's gaze swept the crowd, resting only briefly on him. Her voice didn't tremble. "You said it was over. You signed it in ink. But ink fades faster than the tears. I couldn't blink." The last note lingered, pure, aching, then silenced at a long, suspended moment where no one knew if they should applaud or scream. Whispers erupted like a storm cracking through glass. "Did she just? Is this part of the performance?" She said. His heartbeat. Roman's face was drained of color. He didn't sit, didn't speak. He just stared at Claire like she had stepped out of a nightmare he thought he'd buried in legal contracts. Brielle rose beside him. Her eyes weren't on Claire. They were on him. Claire gave the faintest nod, handed the mic back to the stunned band leader, and stepped off the stage. She didn't need applause. She wasn't singing for them. She was singing for herself and for the child growing inside her, whose heartbeat had finally been heard. Behind her, Roman stumbled from the table, rushing toward the side hallway. Cameras pivoted. Guests whispered louder. Brielle followed, her train dragging like a velvet wound. Claire didn't stop. She walked through the crowd like fog through a battlefield, quiet, unshaken, unstoppable, because it was no longer a wedding reception. It was a reckoning. And the orchestra hadn't even played its final note, yet Roman's PR team scrambled like ants on a burning log. The moment Claire stepped off stage, his head of media rushed forward, barking into her earpiece. We need a statement now. Say it was artistic expression. Say she's mentally, but it was too late. Someone had been live streaming the wedding. A distant cousin. Just another guest trying to impress followers. The moment Claire's lyrics turned accusatory, the stream lit up with comments. When she mentioned his heartbeat, the chat flooded with WTF? And who's the father? Now it had gone viral. On TikTok, the video had crossed 2 million views by the time the cake was wheeled out. Untouched. Claire's friend, Naomi, rushed into the back lounge where Claire sat, still in her stage dress, shoes off, holding a bottle of water with both trembling hands. Naomi locked the door. They found out it's you, she said, pulling out her phone. Claire Vincent, jazz singer, ex-wife of Roman Vale, pregnant, possibly by him. Claire didn't flinch. It was bound to happen. Naomi scrolled through a dozen headlines. Billionaire's wedding hijacked by former wife's scandal song. Claire Vincent breaks silence with lyrics heard round the world. But the narrative is ours now, Naomi said, calmer. People are on your side. Claire looked up. And Brielle? Naomi's mouth tightened. Gone. Slipped out with her bridesmaids 10 minutes after your performance. No word. Her manager just issued a vague no comment. Roman's camp is falling apart. Claire leaned her head back against the velvet cushion. Good. At the venue's front gate, the press had begun assembling. Long lenses. Microphones. Rumors. One reporter shouted, Do you deny being the father, Mr. Vale? Another screamed, Did you force her to sign an NDA during her pregnancy? Claire stayed hidden in the lounge, watching it unfold on a muted television. Roman stood in the lobby, jaw clenched, coat thrown over his shoulder. A publicist beside him whispered frantically, but he kept glancing toward the back, toward the hallway that led to her, not toward Brielle, toward Claire. Naomi touched Claire's hand gently. Do you want me to get the car? Claire nodded slowly. And Claire, Naomi added, there's more. Someone uploaded a separate clip from the hallway. Roman grabbing your arm. It's circulating too. Claire's breath hitched. She turned toward the muted television again and watched herself on the screen, pregnant, calm, steady, while Roman's face twisted with rage in slow motion. The internet didn't need her to explain anymore. The silence he'd once bought was now dissolving in front of millions. Claire stood, straightened her dress, and said only, Then let's make sure the truth finishes what my song started. Outside, the storm was just beginning. The silence Roman paid for turned to ash on a Monday morning. Claire walked into a downtown courthouse holding a slim leather folder. Naomi beside her. Paparazzi outside, flashbulbs popping. Reporters shouted questions, but she kept walking, head high. The documents she carried weren't new, just unsealed. Inside that folder was a copy of her pregnancy report, signed by the OBGYN Roman's legal team had hired to supervise her condition. Attached was the court settlement from months prior, the NDA, the gag clause, the threat of financial ruin if she ever spoke. She wasn't asking anymore. She was showing. Across town, Roman's legal team filed a $10 million lawsuit for breach of contract. Publicly, they claimed defamation. Privately, they panicked, because this wasn't just about a broken clause. It was about why it broke. Claire's lawyer, Lydia Strauss, stood before the judge with fire in her voice. She signed that agreement while emotionally manipulated, isolated, and pregnant. Your Honor, coercion is not consent. Roman's lawyer, a man in a $1,000 suit with teeth too white, objected. She cashed the check. She signed willingly. Claire didn't rise. She didn't need to. Lydia handed the judge a transcript, text, messages from Roman. Ones Claire had saved but never looked at again. Terminate the pregnancy, or you'll have no career left to sing about. I'm giving you a future. Don't ruin it over a mistake. I built you. I can bury you. The courtroom fell silent. Roman wasn't there, but the judge's eyes darkened. He leaned forward. This is not merely breach, it's abuse wrapped in legal ink. And then came the ruling. The NDA was nullified. Claire could speak. Claire could sing. Outside the courthouse, a swarm of reporters surged forward. Naomi stood protectively in front, but Claire stepped past her .1 microphone. One question, what do you want now? Claire looked straight into the camera lens. I want my child to know I never stayed quiet out of shame. I stayed quiet to survive. But now he'll hear the whole song. Across the country, that clip was replayed on every major news network. Roman, sitting alone in his high-rise penthouse, threw a glass at the screen. But the glass didn't break the news cycle. Claire's story wasn't just a headline anymore. It was a movement. That night, Lydia texted Claire. You gave me the courage to speak too. I signed an NDA once. Different man. Same silence. Claire replied with only 3 words. Let's burn them. The legal world buzzed with fear. More women. More contracts. More silence. Ready to be broken. Roman had tried to use the law to erase her. Now the law turned on him. And Claire? She wasn't afraid of contracts anymore. She was rewriting the fine print. In bold, the crash didn't come with sirens. It came with silence. Roman Vale's face disappeared overnight from the homepage of his own company. No press release. No tribute. Just gone. Behind closed doors, the board had met in emergency session. Half the room had watched Claire's courthouse interview. The other half had already seen the leaked recordings, his voice, his threats. There was no PR spin left to give. Roman was removed by unanimous vote. By dawn, investors began their exodus. Stock dropped 17% in 4 hours. Tech blogs called it the fastest fall from grace since Theranos. A hashtag trended. Hashtag Vale silenced her in. One of the recordings, Roman's voice trembled beneath anger. Don't forget who gave you your stage, Claire. Don't you dare rewrite what I made of you. And Claire's quiet reply, brittle but unbroken. I made the music. You just turned down the volume. It played on every news segment for days. Meanwhile, Claire stayed silent. She didn't need to say anything anymore. The world was speaking for her, but it wasn't just corporate collapse. Belle, once the perfectly painted bride, stepped in front of cameras on a stormy Wednesday. She wore no makeup. No publicist beside her. Just a trembling voice and a plain white blouse. I believed him. When he said Claire was unstable. When he said the pregnancy was a trap. I believed him. I watched him lie to the world. And I helped him do it by staying quiet. Not anymore. She paused. Roman doesn't just hurt women. He silences them. I was next. A reporter asked if she was scared to speak. Belle gave a sad smile. I used to be. In the next 24 hours, 3 more women came forward. All with eerily similar stories. Power plays, isolation, and then a signature on paper that cost them their voice. .1 had been a songwriter. .1 had been his former assistant. .1 had been barely legal. Roman's legal team went dark. His phone, once ringing with investor deals and Hollywood options, stayed quiet. In a final desperate move, he tried to post a video apology. It was cold, scripted, robotic. The comments flooded in. Too late. You silenced the wrong woman. Claire sang the truth, and you shattered. The video was taken down in under 2 hours. The next time Roman appeared publicly, it wasn't behind a microphone or spotlight. It was behind tinted courthouse windows, in the back seat of a black SUV. Across the city, Claire sat in a small recording studio, humming lullabies to her unborn child, fingers resting on the mic. She didn't need to fight anymore. She just needed to sing, because the empire had fallen. But her voice stayed. The stage wasn't gilded this time. It was simple, wooden, honest. A single spotlight cut through the dark, warming the microphone like a sunrise. The crowd sat silent, thousands deep. But no phones were raised, no flashes clicked. This wasn't a night for spectacle. It was a night for something deeper. Claire stepped out slowly. Her satin gown clung gently to her belly. 8 months and counting. She had refused a stylist. She wanted to look like herself. Not a statement, not a symbol, just a woman who had survived. Behind her, the banner read, "The Unsilenced, a night for voices lost and found." A benefit concert for women who had endured what she had. What too many had. The hall was packed, but Claire only saw the first few rows. Rows filled with faces not unlike hers. Strong, weathered, soft at the edges from too much heartbreak. Among them sat Brielle, in no longer airbrushed or flawless. She clutched the hand of the young intern Roman once called irrelevant. Beside them, Claire's friend, now her manager, nodded softly, tears already welling. Claire stepped up to the mic. She didn't speak. She sang. The first few notes were low and trembling, like footsteps in fog. Then the lyrics came, slow, clear, biting. "He bought my silence, but not my soul. Told me I was broken, just to stay in control. But even cracked glass catches the light." Her voice swelled. Strong, rich. Her eyes stayed shut. "You left me voiceless, but I found a song that I bled in shadows. Now I stand strong. I am the echo you couldn't erase." In the front row, a woman in her 60s wiped her eyes. A girl no older than 15 clutched a tissue in both hands. A former corporate assistant leaned forward, shoulders trembling, as if hearing her own life reflected in every note. Claire wasn't just performing. She was remembering. She was rewriting. The final verse hit like thunder wrapped in velvet. "Your empire fell, but my voice stayed. That I built my name where you threw me away. And this lullaby, is not for you." She held the last note until it broke gently at the edges. Then, silence. The audience didn't erupt. They rose slowly, as one, hands over hearts. Not a concert reaction. A eulogy for every silenced woman who never made it to the mic. Claire bowed, eyes glassy. From backstage, a soft voice whispered, "That was it. Claire, that was everything." She nodded, breathing deeply. "He built walls," she said quietly, "but we turned them into stages." That night, the performance aired nationwide. It trended for days. News anchors called it the voice that broke the silence. But for Claire, the real moment came later, when the applause was long gone, and she stood in front of her mirror backstage. She placed both hands on her stomach. "I sang for you too," she whispered. That a gentle kick was her only reply. And somewhere, in that quiet, Claire smiled. The room was quiet, almost sacred. Soft light filtered through the curtains as monitors beeped steadily, their rhythm mimicking the quiet heartbeat of something beginning. Claire lay in bed, her body sore, her face pale, but her eyes glowed. Wrapped in a soft cream blanket, the newborn nestled against her chest, rising and falling with her mother's breath. She was impossibly small, but she was perfect. Claire pressed a kiss to the baby's forehead. "Melody," she whispered. The name had come to her during the final contraction, when the pain threatened to swallow her, when the world narrowed into heat and thunder and trembling hands. In that moment, the name was her anchor, Melody, the song she could finally sing without fear, without apology, without him. A nurse smiled from the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Would you like to write the name on the birth certificate now?" Claire nodded, brushing a damp curl from her forehead. "Melody Vale." There was a long pause. The nurse tilted her head. "You're keeping his last name?" Claire didn't blink. Not for him. For her. Because she'll redefine it. On the wall above the bassinet hung a small framed quote. Claire had brought it herself, tucked into her overnight bag with the baby clothes and backup chargers. It read, "My voice is mine." Not a lyric. A promise point. 2 days later, Claire was discharged. Cameras camped outside the hospital, but her manager had arranged for a back exit and a quiet car. No flashbulbs. No press. Just quiet. In her apartment. Everything was ready. A bassinet in the corner. A warm yellow blanket draped over a rocking chair. A mobile that played soft jazz lullabies instead of nursery tunes. No pink explosion, no frilly bows. Just comfort. Just home. Melody settled in easily, as if she'd always belonged there. Claire stayed up that night, cradling her on the couch. Outside, rain pattered gently on the windows. Inside, Claire hummed, half lullaby, half memory. In another city, Roman sat alone in a penthouse now stripped of furniture and staff. The news had been relentless since Claire's performance. Interviews, lawsuits, shareholders resigning in disgrace. His reputation was in freefall. His fortune, halved and falling. His phone vibrated. A news notification. Claire Vale welcomes baby girl. Names her Melody in emotional post. There was a picture attached. Not of the baby. Just Claire, sitting in a rocking chair, eyes closed, head tilted back, smiling like someone who had finally exhaled after years underwater. Roman stared at it. He thought he would feel rage that he felt. Nothing. Because in the end, she hadn't destroyed him. She had simply outgrown him. At sunrise. Claire stood by the window with Melody in her arms. The sky was painted with soft peach and silver. Birds stirred. You're free, Claire whispered, not from him, but from shame, from secrecy, from silence. One day, she would tell Melody the whole story, not to burden her, but to show her how far they'd come. That her mother once lost everything and still chose to sing, and that her name, Melody, wasn't chosen by accident. That it was chosen because even in heartbreak, even in silence, music had never left her. Claire turned, kissed her daughter's brow again. Welcome to the world, she whispered, and in her arms, Melody cooed, like a first note forming, like the beginning of a brand new song.